Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye, bye. Let's get straight to the intro. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you do that. Put your notifications on all so that way you're directing the direction of the dope content that I stay kicking. And I appreciate the support. So I seen a video that was done yesterday, man, by Joey, Free from Fetters Grove. And me and Joey, we have a long history. We go way back. I can't say it was always the best, but Joey's always been respectful. Even though, and I know Joey's going to see this, brother, you did me just a little bit dirty, right? I'm still waiting on a little something, but it is what it is, right? We're going to let that go. We're going to let that go because Joey has went through some tragic loss, some tragedy. And I seen what happened to your son, man, and my utmost condolences to you and your family, bro. And I wouldn't wish that upon nobody, man. So, from me to you, brother, I'm sorry to hear that. Now, he did a video about Manosa. And for those of you that don't know who Manosa is, he is the brother of the Supreme Commander, the ex-Supreme Commander of the Northern group, right? Babu Sosa from Santa Barbara. Now, Babu Sosa is pretty notoriously known deep into the origins and the history of the Norteño movement and everything that it entails. And Babu's name is one that's spoken with reverence. And a lot of people, you either love him or you hate him. But there's no doubt he's one of the founding fathers of the whole Norteño cause and movement, right? Now, his brothers were very instrumental in that cause as well. And I happened to be on a yard with his brother Manos, and I seen that Joey did a video about Manos and said that he was actually on the same yard as Manos when Manos passed away. That's crazy because I was on that exact same yard, didn't even know Joey was there. Probably wouldn't have noticed or recognized him back then because I'm sure we ran in different circles. But at the same time, the story he tells is almost dead on. But there was a few different circumstances to his story, right? Now, whether there's a lot of truth to it or non-truths, I don't know. But one thing I could tell you for sure is my version of the story of Manos passing away that day, how it went down, what happened, and why, from what I was told by his cellie, who was a personal homeboy of mine from San Jose, from Sanjo, my interactions with Manos on that yard, how Manos had it, he had more juice than any person I've ever seen incarcerated in my life. They actually did a moment of silence for him, the COs did, right? And everything that went down before, prior, and after. So, let me tell you, when I got to that yard, I didn't know much of anybody in the beginning. I was placed in the gym. I was level 3, so I was gym living. And this was in SADF, Corcoran SADF, which is basically also known as New Corcoran Prison, right? And it was the other side. It was a non-active yard. That's a fact, right? And everybody was just doing what they do. You meet people, you become friends or you don't. And on those non-active side of the yards, man, you kind of want to watch who you're around just based upon, man, everybody's cutthroat. There's no politics besides the dropout gangs that are doing their thing. So you kind of want to stay out the way, right? Excuse me, I just ate. I got the Buddha piece. And I chose to kind of kick it with just a couple people, man, that I had met on other yards, people that I ran into that I knew from prior prisons, and try not to make any new friends because, again, like I said, man, you can come up short on those yards trying to meet new friends, and plus you don't know who you're fraternizing with. So immediately upon me arriving on that yard, someone that I knew from the streets, from my actual hometown, came up to me, and I've told that story before. He was actually a Southerner from my town, man. I knew his whole family. His brother, we actually shared the same baby's mama. My first baby mama and his brother, she has a kid from both of us, right? So we linked up right there in the yard. He was an ex-Southerner, ex-Southsider. He was doing his thing. He was doing 40 to life. That was kind of my go-to right there, was the homie. Then there was another homeboy there that was actually from Merced as well, ex-Northerner. So these were the guys I know for sure were locked in, were solid. They were both lifers. It was what it was. And so I'm mobbing on the yard, right? I'm doing fucking short time, chicken shit time compared to what they were doing. One day, both of them did come out the building. They were both in the buildings, right? So I'm just strolling the yard with the homeboy from Oakland. We're mobbing around. And Manos, this was my first time. I had seen Manos, didn't know who he was, knew about his history. Of course, I knew the history of Manos. When I was active, I was laced with all the founding fathers, the forefathers of the game and all that. But I didn't know him personally, right? I would just see this older gentleman, older man walking around. He had the handlebar mustache. It was all gray. He had his hair slicked back. He looked and he carried himself with a certain poise, right? And a certain professionalism. You could tell he was somebody once upon a time, but he was no longer in the mix like that anymore. He was an older gentleman. Now, he worked at Canteen and the package line. That's what he did. That was his highlight. He had the best highlight in there. He had the plug, right? You could not get a package unless you went to Manos, period, okay? What they used to do is if you had a package coming, they would put a list like on a, not a telephone pole, but basically one of the light poles, and you'd go out there to the yard and you look, and if your name was on that list, then you'd go get in the package line, and Manos would be the actual one to hand you your package, right? He put his hands on everything you had. He'd dump it out, sort through it, and give it to you. You'd put it in your laundry bag and take it in. That's how it went down on that yard, right? Manos had a little plug. He had a little hustle going on. The hustle was, if you wanted to get ahead of the package line to be the first one out there on his list, because he had the list. He made the list, whether it be alphabetical order or he put on his homeboys or whoever he wanted. You had to plug them in with either $5 worth of canteen items or candy. He loved candy, man. That's the facts. And so I didn't know him. And one day I'm walking by and he's like, hey, little homie. Hey, little homie. And when you're in prison, that's them's fighting words. Like, what the fuck you mean, little homie, bro? Right? So I see him, but it was the way he said it. And with the professionalism he said it in, I knew that he wasn't doing it to be an asshole or to try to check me or punk me, right? He was just like, hey, that's what he was used to. He was like, hey, little homie, because I was younger than him. I said, well, what's up? He said, come here. He's like, hey, bro, you got a package coming? And I actually did. And I didn't even get in line because I see my name was at the bottom of the list because my last name starts with the V, right? And it was in alphabetical order, I presume. So I said, man, I'll go tomorrow, man. I ain't going to get my package. I'm not going to wait in line the whole fucking yard. And that's it. And for some reason, it was like God made it possible for him to just out of everybody. And I was like, yeah, bro. He's like, hey, trip out. I usually charge people. And he ran me down the whole hustle. He's like, but I'm going to plug you in, bro. I seen you walking around. I know who you are. I know your homeboys, right? I know your homeboy Green Eyes and your homeboy Crow and shit. And I was like, oh, that's what's up, bro. He's like, yeah. He's like, so I got you. So he plugged me in my package right there. Cops didn't say nothing. They acted. Manos was the only person that I ever seen on the yard that was invisible. He was a fantasma, a ghost, right? He could be on that yard during count time walking around with his little ice chest, man, doing his thing, and did no cops. They acted like he didn't exist. He was walking. He was never in a cell. He was always walking around. So anyways, he plugged me in. After that, every time I would walk by, he sat on these bleachers, right? And every time he went to yard, he'd have this little ice chest with his sodas and whatever else he had in there. And him and another dude from Baker's, right? He was an old guy from the Northern Organization from Bakersfield, right? He had long hair. He was a Native American dude. Them two dudes and another dude that was an ex-Southerner, right? They used to sit right there and just chill and just chop it up and do their thing. And every time I passed by, he was like, what's up, homie? I'll be like, oh, what's up, Manos? Now, I remember one particular time, man, I thought, oh, man, the homie's, he's trying to fucking get a motherfucker, right? Because every time I walk by, he used to be like, where's the tobacco at, right? I don't know if he smoked or not. I never seen him, but he used to always say, where's the tobacco at? Now, I ended up running into a homeboy, Smiley from Southside, from Hanford, right? Southside locals, ex-Northerner too. Me and him were in Nellis together. It was my boy, Big Smiles. And I ran into him my second day on the yard. We seen each other in the chow hall, and bam, he had the plug on the frajos. He had the super plug. Always had tobacco, right? So he would usually take care of me like, hey, bro, shoot me 5-6 sticks here, 5-6 sticks there. I'd make my money. I'd smoke. I was a smoker, man, smoking cigarettes all the time. So I smoked more than I sold, right? But that particular day, I hadn't seen Smiley for a couple of days. You know, sometimes he'd come out to the yard, sometimes he wouldn't, just depending on what he had going on. So as I'm walking by, Manos was like, hey, homie. I'm like, what's up, bro? He's like, you got tobacco? And this was the first time he actually directed it towards me rather than just blurring it out. And I was like, nah, bro, I ain't got none, bro. Spencer. He's like, nah, come here. And he handed me 3 sticks. He's like, for you and the homies right there. And I was with the homeboy from Oakland and another little homie from Modesto, right? Boom, he plugged me in. I was like, cool. Kept on mobbing, right? So every day, man, Manos was cool. Shoot me a soda here. Just cool dude, right? And I asked the homies, I was like, is that the Manos? That's Babu's brother, Manos from Santa Bruta, like the fucking legendary Manos. They're like, yeah. I was like, damn, bro. I've seen pictures of him in the past. He don't even look like that no more. He said was a frail kind of. I mean, he was cut up. You could tell he had size back in the days, but he was more of a frail old man. Anyways, this dude had more respect from the cops and from everybody. North side, didn't matter what side of California you were from, black, white. He transcended ethnicity, politics, all that. He was just, people respected him because he was a real gangster, not a gang member, a gangster, right? So anyways, let me tell you about the day that he passed, because I seen Joey's video, and Joey said that Manos took his life because he got shot down at board. Now, I remember the day Manos went to board. He had a board hearing, and he was shot down. And I think he was given a 2 or 3 year extension. And I talked to Manos that day. He came out to the yard after, was not tripping on that. Not at all. Not in the least. Manos had been down for 30 plus years, maybe 40. That was chicken shit time to him. He was not tripping off that. So I'm not trying to rain on Joey's parade and say he had it wrong. I don't know how close he was to Manos. I think I was probably a little bit closer. I chopped it up with him every day. That's a fucking fact. He wasn't tripping off that. What had happened was 2 things. One, Manos had a hustle in there. What his hustle was, I'll never tell. That's not for me to tell, but he had a hustle. And it was a good hustle. And he was plugged in, and he was getting his paper, right? And he was sending his money to his mother. His money was consistently going to his mother, and he had stacked up 50 to 100 racks, man. That's a fact, right? And what had happened was about a week prior, I think it was 3 days prior to Manos taking his own life on that yard, his mother had passed away. And when his mother passed away, there was a story going around that some of his family members had went to his mother's pad and took all Manos's money, right? Now, I don't know that if that's the facts or the truth. That was just a story that was kind of floating around. And the only way the story could have been put out there was by Manos himself, right? He never told me that story. He did tell me when his mother passed, and I did send my condolences, like, hey, Spencer, bro. And I remember he was drinking coffee that whole day, and he didn't really drink coffee too much, and he was slamming it. And he looked hurt. He looked sad, man. And I've seen a lot of people like that lose family members, especially their mothers that are incarcerated. It's hard for them to deal with. You know, she was one of the last surviving closest members of his family. You know, his brothers are gone. A lot of his extended family is no longer around. So that was his lifeline right there. He was always talked about his mother, man. Oh, my mother said this, or my mother said that, or I'm getting a visit by my headphone. And just, you know, Manos was good people, man. You could see the killer in him. But I didn't expect what happened. So every morning they would do pill call. They do more pill call in the mornings and the evenings, right? At this time, Manos was in, I think he was in 3 or 4 block. 4 block, if I'm correct, right? And he was sold up with a homeboy from San Jose, from San Jose, was probably about 45, 50 years old, right? Kind of an older gentleman, but not very old. Well, like the age I am now, right? I was younger back then. I was in my 30s. And he was a cool-ass homeboy from San Jose, but he used to take heart medication. And so he'd go out in the mornings or the evenings. It was very, what is it called? It varied, you know what I mean? Sometimes he'd go out in the morning time for his pill call. Sometimes he'd go out in the evening. They like to do a lot of the triple CMS pills and the nanas and all that at night. So most of the times he'd go in the morning. So this particular day, and I got this story from him after, because I asked him, you know, so that day, bam, he goes to pill call. We don't hear nothing about 10 or 11 o'clock in the afternoon, man. Or was it 10 or 11? We heard alarms go off in the building, didn't know what was going on. They kept us on lockdown. And we come out about 11 or 12, right, to yard. They released yard, and everyone's talking about Manos took his life. Manos is dead, right? And there's a lot of different variants of the story. People are saying that he took his life and laid in his bed. But I'll tell you exactly what happened from his cellie. Facts, right? Manos took his life. And what had happened was he sent his cellie out to pill call. He told the cellie, hey, go out to pill call and stay out there. Now, the night prior, and his cellie said the night prior, what Manos did was he shaved his mustache off, his eyebrows, his hair. He shaved his whole body. I don't know why he did that, why he chose to do that, if he was in prayer or whatever he was doing, but he did that. And his cellie thought it was a trip. His cellie said that ever since his mom passed, it was fucking with him. And I know the other story about him getting jacked for his money might have been fucking with him too. I don't know. To me, it seems like after he lost his mother, he changed. And at least he did on the yard. He was very quiet. Like I said, he was very, like he was always in thought for that week, right? And I just chop it up with him every day. And I always made it a fact to stop at them bleachers and chop it up with them dudes because they were clutch up. They were old school. They gave me hella tobacco. It was just cool, right? And they'd always be high right there off that black, just doing their thing. That's a fact. And so, anyways, Manos, what he did was he shaved his whole body and he told his cellie, hey, you could have everything that I got. I need you to go out to Pill Call and stay out there as long as possible. And so his cellie wasn't aware that Manos was going to take his life. He figured Manos had something going on. Maybe he was going to get off. Maybe he didn't want to sell. He was going to drag someone in there and kill him. Like, he didn't know what Manos was doing. But the last thing he thought was Manos was going to take his life. But he thought Manos was going to go to the oil. Manos told him, hey, bro, I'm not going to be around for a while. So you could have all my shit if I go anywhere, right? So he figured, okay, Manos going to get off. He gave me his shit, whatever, right? What Manos did was he shaved off his whole body the night before. When his cellie went out to pill line, which was about 9 or 10 o'clock, Manos fucking went straight out right on front of his door and slit all his veins and bled out right there in front of his cell. Not on his bed. He came right out of the cell so everyone could see him, and he bled out right there. Now, when I heard that story, I said, that's crazy. Why would he do it like that? I mean, cut everything. Cut all his shit, right? And his cellie said, I don't know, bro. That's just what happened. They put his cellie immediately in the cages in the infirmary to hold him while they sent the hazmat team to clean up his cell and take his body. And I remember they sent out yard, and then the lieutenant got there for the second shift, and he slammed the yard again. Like, nah. I guess he had that much respect for Manos. And I remember they announced it. It's the only time I ever heard they announced it over the PA system in the whole prison that Manosa had passed. I think it was at 10:49 a.m. and that, you know, they wanted to do a moment of silence, that he was a legendary figure within the California prison system. And that's a fact. That's what happened with Manos, man. You know, I heard Joey's story about, you know, he got shot down at board. That could have been the case. Maybe all of it. You know, imagine getting shot down at board. You think you're getting out. Some of your family members take your money. Your mother passes. When you have that much weight on you, as someone that's already in a hopeless situation, man, you know, it compiles. That's why for the people that are locked up, man, it's like, I understand your situation. Even if I've never been a lifer and never faced that adversity, I understand, right? But I just wanted to touch on this subject. And I know Dubs was talking about doing a video on it, but I was actually on the yard with Manos, used to talk to him every day. That was who I considered a friend, right? And I know there's going to be haters. Oh, Gunner knows everyone. You can say whatever the fuck you want. That's a fact, right? That happened right there in Sadaf on E-Yard, man. And that's just the way it is. True stories, right? And so shout out to Joey, man, and condolences on your loss of your loved one. And like I said, he had the story pretty much accurate. And I guess we were on the yard together, didn't even know it. Who would have thunk it, right? But I was actually on that yard when Joey was there. And according to what Joey said, I know he was there for facts, unless he heard the story from someone else and just is relaying it. And I'm not calling him a liar, but I know I talked to Manos the day before he did it. He killed himself, and there was no indication that this is what he was going to do. He was a little down and out, like I said, for the past few days when his mother passed, but nothing of the sort that made me think he would do that. And again, why is the Manos story so tragic? You know, Manos was an instrumental part into the foundation of the Norteño cause, man. There's not a lot of Norteños that are running around right now, especially the ones with the weird haircuts, that know who Manos was. They know his brother Babo just because they heard stories. But the Sosa family was very instrumental into a lot, even in Santa Barbara. For those that don't know in the history, if you hear any gang members out of Santa Barbara, they call it Bruta. Well, Bruta, the word Bruta was actually started by Babu Sosa, Manos' brother, in the youth authority. He's the one that came up with the word Santa Bruta. So that's just a historical fact, man. Back in the days, the old timers in Santa Barbara would get Santa Barbara, the whole thing blasted on them, because they didn't like to say Bruta, because that Sosa family was notorious and nobody liked them because they were basically members of the northern side, right? That's just what it is, man. But Babu and Manos, they transcend before it was Norteños and Southsiders. We're talking about when it was just two organizations in prison that were at odds for whatever reasons they were at odds for. And I guarantee it's not for what you think, man, and none of the propaganda you've been fed. Anyways, with that being said, man, rest in peace to Manos, man. It's been a lot of years since I talked to that guy, man, and since that happened. And shout out again to Joey. Dubs is going to be doing a video also. All I want to say is, man, hey, think about your family that are locked up in there, man, and maybe write them a letter or go visit them, man, because you never know what their frame of mind is. Manos was a good dude, man, and a friend. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people, man. This video is sponsored by Vario Liquors out there in Turlock, California. If you're ever in the area, man, go tap in at the Vario, man, and get you something cold. And Sticks and Stones Yard Services out there in AZ, man. Pull up, get your shit hooked up. The gun. Bang, bang.